You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning into the podcast today. This one is a special episode. I gotta say, this one was very unique and very, very fun and very insightful. Although, fair warning, we talk about gear almost not at all. We definitely talk about it a little bit, but what I really wanted to know was about this thing called music therapy. Chris is a listener of the podcast, and we got hooked up. We kind of tell that story on the air. But basically, Chris shot me a message, and I saw in his email signature that he had music therapist in the email that he had sent me. And I thought, wow, what an interesting thing to talk about. So here we are. We sat down. He fills in a lot of the details, kind of explains what that really means. I know we've all kind of, for lack of a better term, self-treated with music in some form or fashion. We all know how powerful that can be, but he really takes and shows that there's a science and there's a technique behind it and what goes into it. But more than anything, he's kind of showing how it's a very viable career for a musician. If you're wired that way and if you think that is something that you're passionate about and helping people in music and all of that sounds great. I mean, why not give it a try? And so he talks about musictherapy.org. That link's in the show notes if you want to have a little more information about it. Also, he takes us towards the end of the podcast. He takes us through a short relaxation script that he might use for somebody. Really, it could work in any situation. And I found it very, very enjoyable. So when we get to that point, it's around 48-ish minutes or so. If you want to just pause, get yourself nice and comfortable. Maybe lots of people listen to podcasts while they're doing other things. But if you can take 5 minutes, get comfortable in a chair, and kind of go through it with me, you can experience the same kind of level of that I did. And it's kind of a cool experience, and it really opens your eyes to kind of the possibilities that are out there for this kind of stuff. So yeah, check out that link, and don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter and, the Tone Mob newsletter. We talk about that all the time. I don't need to talk about that anymore. Let's get right into the show. All right, boom. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today for a little bit different episode, I have Chris Millet. How's it going, man?
It's going good, man. Glad to be here.
Did I say your last name right? I should have asked you that before.
Absolutely perfect.
Yes.
And most people get it wrong. Yeah. So you did it perfect.
I was going to say that could have been a Millet, could have been a Millett. It could have been any number of combinations.
I get all of them. And it's like, man, it seems like a pretty normal name, but I guess it's not common enough that I get the curveballs every now and then.
I think most people probably think Millet. They probably think that, but they're like, maybe this is
gotta be more fancy than that.
Maybe this is a fancy guy. Yeah, I get A's added to mine a lot. It's like Blake Wayland? Is Wayland here? There's no I'm like, there's no A. I get it. Wayland's a lot more common. Your mind plays tricks on you. But
I think those names are more tricky when it's like close to a typical name, but you don't normally see it. I feel like people mess that up even more than if they're trying hard because it looks like a difficult name. But yeah, I don't know.
I think that's right. I think that's very accurate. Well, we can jump right in here and get to some of the nitty gritty of why I said this is a little bit different episode.
Yeah, man.
Maybe you want to give your perspective on how you arrived to be, well, you're in the same spot you would normally be, but to be recording with me today.
Yeah, well, I I just listened to your recent episode of Chasing Tone, and I was one of those people that was trying to win one of your first giveaways. That was one of the, you're too late. So that's kind of how you and I first contacted directly, because I've been listening to your show, to Chasing Tone, to a lot of the different gear podcasts, because I am a gearhead. But the reason we decided to like get together and chat is because I'm a music therapist, and we just thought it'd be super cool to, let some of the Tone Mob crew know about that, and hopefully inspire some people to look into music therapy, because right now music therapy is still fairly small as a profession in the US. There's about, I don't know the exact number, but there's somewhere between like 6 to 8,000 in the US, and there's a lot around the world as well. But I just think it's a cool career opportunity that a lot of musicians don't know about, or don't find out about until like later in life, when I think if people know about it as soon as they can, some people could explore that as an option.
For sure. I mean, for me, as somebody who's, very deeply involved in music and love all this stuff, I only have a very, I don't know, probably only because the words are familiar to me. I don't really know how music therapy works. I know that myself and probably everybody else who's listened to this podcast has inadvertently used it, or maybe on purpose, as a form of self-therapy. But I don't
Yeah.
know, as far as like an active practice, that most musicians are even aware that it's a real, applicable thing.
Yeah, I would say not. I was really fortunate, found out about it when I was in high school. But I kind of had the same response, like, oh, music and therapy, like that makes sense. I want to look into that. It was
Right.
kind of that same natural inclination. And because music is therapeutic, and a lot of the people that like the circles that you talk with and everything, obviously people are super invested in music. So we get that connection. We get that why music is powerful, and why we want to be obsessed with guitars and pedals and music and all the other things. So I think it's inherent. It's inherent in a lot of culture in general, and it's been it, evident, throughout history. As long as you look back, there are people playing music. So I think that part is it can almost be like overlooked, because you're like, oh, well, music's everywhere. But music therapy, basically, I'm going to give you kind of the clinical definition. So from our American Music Therapy Association, they define it as the clinical and evidence-based use of music interventions to accomplish individualized goals within a therapeutic relationship, and that's by a credentialed professional who's completed a music therapy program. So what that large sentence basically means is it's using research-based, evidence-based ways of interacting in music to help the wellness and the need areas of a bunch of different people. And when we talk about the different people in a clinical term, that's called like populations. So that could be people with special needs. It could be prison populations. It could be people who have had, car accidents, neurologic impairments. It could just be people that are hospitalized, as well as like elder care. So music therapists work in like a wide variety of settings, and with a wide variety of types of people.
So, how did you let's explore kind of your path to it, though, since it is such an unusual choice for most people to make. You discovered it in high school, but obviously music was probably a big part of your life by the time you found it. So how does this progression take place?
Yes. So my parents were deadheads. We're like a big Grateful Dead heads. So when I was growing up, literally, the best estimate we have is by the time I was 5 years old, I had seen the Dead about 50 times.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it was serious. Like the day before I was born, my mom was at a Bob Dylan show. And then, like, literally, I think the doctor said it's safe to take him in public. And they took me to a Grateful Dead show, like within my first month of life. So I cried when Jerry Garcia died. I was like a small child, and just like, that was like the first time I remember even like grief was about Jerry Garcia. So, so music was always around. My dad is a self-taught guitar player. And I remember he was on like a message board for Widespread Panic, the jam band, and would tab out Widespread Panic songs and print them out on like dot matrix paper. So that's like my childhood. I remember like sheets of tablature and like guitars being around. My dad mostly plays like acoustic type stuff back then, and it was always around. And I like didn't really start music until middle school. I started band, and I signed up because I wanted to play drums and percussion. And as soon as I get there, like, no, too many people have signed up for percussion. What do you want to play? So I ended up with trumpet just because I liked Louis Armstrong for some reason. Like, I knew What a Wonderful World as a little kid, and I was like, that would be cool. Trumpet sounds fun. And it was fine. I did trumpet all through high school, and I did marching band and all of that. But I got a guitar in seventh grade. My dad, so that Christmas, I was actually super mad because my dad got my siblings, it seemed like a mountain of presents that year. And I didn't ask for it, but all he got me was a electric guitar. And I was like, what the heck? I can't play this. I didn't ask for this. Well, like, what is this? And it was a Squire 2 HSS made in Korea Strat. I think it's like early 90s. And right away he showed me like literally the 12-bar blues, like shuffle, like do 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 do. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to be the next Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like, I was all in. Like, so I went from being super annoyed to like practicing and playing constantly and like learning AC/DC and like all that like middle school just classic rock kind of stuff. So I like Jimi Hendrix and AC/DC. And then I made some friends and really got into the Misfits. So like old punk. And from there, I naturally like started joining bands and got into like all kinds of metal through like Iron Maiden. I got into like power metal, and I had a power metal band in high school and did, battles of the bands and things like that. And then had a black metal band for a hot minute. And just kind of did the playing guitar and singing when they needed me to sing and all of that kind of stuff while I was still in marching band and like learning, the fundamentals of music, but it didn't transfer super easily to guitar. Like, I didn't know where the notes were on the guitar, and I couldn't like read music on the guitar until senior year. I took this class where I honestly took it because other people told me it was cool, and you got out a half day of school and you went and job shadowed out in the community. And I was like, yeah, get out of high school half the day. This sounds awesome.
Exactly.
So I took that class. Yeah. And it was called experience-based career education. And it had everything from like bakers to lawyers to dentists to doctors, like any random job that's in a like medium-sized city. And I looked on there, and the only jobs for music were shadowing my current band director. And I was like, well, I don't want to be at my school shadowing my band director. That's lame. So
plus you basically already know what he does.
Yeah.
For the most
And
part.
I never really wanted to be a music educator. I was like, man, I just don't want to be doing band music like this. I did jazz band as well on guitar and like stuff like that, but I didn't want to be in that school setting. I was just like, no, high schoolers are rotten. Like, this is not my thing. And now I'm married to a high school teacher, so there you go. But so I took that class, and I saw a music therapist, and I saw Eastern State Psychiatric Hospital. And I was like, whoa, that sounds wild. And all I knew about that hospital is my great grandmother was a nurse there. It's like one of the oldest psych hospitals in the US. It's like in the top 5 oldest. And she told me about crazy things that like happened there in like the 30s and the 40s when she was working there. And I was just like, man, that sounds nuts. I want to go see what this is about. And from there, I was actually like super floored. Basically, this lady, the setup was like a group room where she was primarily, her background was a pianist. So she had everybody gathered around the piano. And these were people with pretty severe psychiatric conditions, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder. So people that are like actively having like psychoses and hallucinations and not necessarily totally in the moment with you. And just seeing her be able to start with a simple song that like gathers everybody together and brought everybody to like, they might not know what day it is, they might not know what is going on or what they're dealing with, but they're in the moment singing these songs and connecting and working on self-esteem and working on how to manage anger and how to be present and all of these things that were really I didn't know all the therapeutic stuff that was going on at the time. I just thought it was super cool. And there were a couple clients that played guitar and she knew I played guitar. So she helped me like, why don't you help him? So I did like almost like a guitar lesson for a couple of the people. And then we had that guy perform for the rest of the group. Immediately I was like totally hooked. I signed up to go there multiple times across the year. And then I found out, I was like, okay, where do I go to do this? And found out that the nearest school, I'm from Kentucky, so the nearest school was in the University of Louisville. And right away was like, well, I guess this is what I'm doing. And I signed up and knew a little bit about music therapy, but luckily through the coursework, I found out like, oh, this is totally for me. It was cool being in a music school. I had a bluegrass band in college and still gig occasionally and things like that. But through school, you get to work with a lot of different populations and you get to learn what it's like to work with individuals and what it's like to work in groups. And then the last part of a music therapy degree is to do an internship. And that's like an intensive, usually a 6-month period where you're at a facility, basically just learning how to be a music therapist, like 40 hours a week. Like you're like the shadow, an apprentice, if you will, of a music therapist or a team of music therapists. And then after that, there's a board certification exam and you sit down and take that and then you're qualified. So a lot of that training is like on human development, music and music theory and all the regular music classes, as well as like counseling skills and how to use instruments and music therapeutically and then all that field work. So it's like a combination of psychology and healthcare and just a lot of things coming together to basically use music to help people in a creative way. So there's a lot of different ways that people practice, and there's a lot of different populations that people can work in and specialize in. And that's why I think a lot of people should know about it as an option, because it's a great career path for somebody who likes to help people and likes to use music.
One thing that I noticed that I thought was kind of interesting, and I don't know if you've really thought about it, but you've talked about a lot of different styles of music and a lot of different bands. But like
Correct.
one thing you did mention, excuse me, was you played in a black metal band, and then fast forward a little bit further, you were like, and then I was in a bluegrass band, and then I'm thinking Grateful Dead, black metal, bluegrass. I'm like, this is probably slightly unintentionally kind of perfect for your career, because you never know who you're going to be talking to. And it's like, do you know this song? And if they're talking to somebody like you versus somebody like me, the answer is more likely to be yes, or you can think of a style of music that I'm kind of projecting here, but yeah, I'm thinking like you could just do a lot more for a lot more people if you have a variety of interests the way you do. Have you found that to be true?
Yes, I think it definitely helps to have a lot of knowledge of a lot of music, but so to get into the kind of like the nuts and bolts of what a session like looks like, depending on the population. Like when I was working in the hospital, seeing a lot of children and adults that are, it's the hospital, so it could be just very regular people that get sick and they're in the hospital. So that kind of population, knowing a lot of we call it repertoire, but a lot of songs and a lot of genres, it is super helpful because you never know who you're going to run into. And there are some populations and there are some approaches to the way people theoretically think about music therapy that using different genres like that is more impactful than others. Some people practice from a very improvisational model where it's very active in the moment, a lot of improvising. Some people, it's very repertoire based. It's kind of like psychology. I don't know how much about like going to different therapies, but there are different orientations and ways that people conceptualize that. So for some people, that repertoire is humongous. And I think it's good for, like you said, just connecting with people as well. Um, but like I work in a place now where I work with a lot of different groups. So it is very helpful for me to be able to know a lot of Disney songs as well as how to improvise as well as when I'm working with like an addiction recovery group, I'm using like Tool and, more aggressive alt country and things like that, uh, somebody who's been incarcerated identifies a lot more than like a top 40 type song. So,
Right.
yeah, so a wide variety of music, I think is helpful in general, but for some people, the way they practice, it's even more essential.
Gotcha. That does lead me to my next question, which is like, let's just, hypothetically say you're coming into a session with a brand new patient, one that you've never worked with before, so you don't really know, exactly, I'm assuming, what the interaction is going to be like. Where do you even start? I'm so unfamiliar with all this. Like, what is step one?
Yeah, so we follow just a therapy process that kind of guides how your brain organizes that thought because it is overwhelming. Um, and that process is getting referral information. Then you're doing an assessment. After that, you determine their needs and you turn that into goals. And those goals get turned into objectives, ways that you can see if you're making progress. And then you go from there. So in a place like a hospital, you might get somebody who says, this person's really in pain. And that's all the nurse tells you because the nurse is like, and I've got to go put an IV in this other patient right now. Sorry, can't talk. So that is a very real situation. And you walk in, and usually how I start in something like the hospital would be, "Hi, I'm Chris. Nice to meet you. Uh, your nurse told me that you're in pain today, and I'm just seeing if music can be a way that we can either distract from that pain or um, teach you some ways to cope with that pain through music. How's it sound?" And usually people are like, oh, okay, or some people are
Right.
like, that's great. And then some people are like, I don't know, I'm tired. But I think from there, how it typically looks is whether it's a session with someone with special needs or whether it's in a hospital or whatever, it usually just involves trying to find a way to make music. We try to use people's strengths. So people don't have to be inherently musicians to come to music therapy. Um, but musicians are also totally welcome and encouraged as well. But we're trained to know, okay, I've got a lot of percussion instruments. What could be successful for this client who maybe has cerebral palsy and can't grasp a mallet very well? Or so we have a lot of easy percussion instruments and we use all kinds of stuff and we figure out ways to MacGyver instruments and turn them into things that could be easily adapted and played by a variety of people. But usually it turns into making music, and that can either be using familiar music and things that people like, or it could be something that I've written, or it could be improvised on the spot. But I usually have my guitar always with me because the primary instruments that you have to be uh, air quotes competent in. That's what the music therapy training is. All schools are going to make sure people are competent using their voice, using guitar, using piano, and using percussion generically. So like a lot of different percussion. So,
Interesting. Is that just because that's what's, most common in popular music, or what's the reasoning behind the specific instruments?
um, that is definitely partially it, because in like the 60s, there were schools that were requiring people to be good at like organ, and there were people. And what are some other instruments? I think accordion used to be an instrument that was focused on in music therapy training, and that's long since fallen out of what current people are doing. So there are a lot
Okay,
of like
all right.
current. They do a lot of like surveys and see what people are practicing and doing. So um, yeah, it does have somewhat to do with what's popular, and it's also like what are people using. Um, but those are kind of like the pillars, and obviously people are free to use whatever and a lot of other adapted instruments. Um, but those are kind of like the main four that we focus a lot on in education.
Okay, gotcha. So is it a requirement before? I mean, obviously, it's very, very unlikely that anyone who's interested in this would not play an instrument of some sort, I would think. But is it a requirement to learn that stuff beforehand, or do they help teach you some of that stuff in school?
No, it is not a requirement. The requirement would be that you do have to get accepted into a music school. So some people get accepted into a music school on instruments like flute or clarinet or trumpet. So you have to have that level of musicianship enough to be accepted into that school. But there, I have many colleagues who didn't start playing guitar, piano, or even using their voice or using percussion until that time.
Okay.
And I personally came from playing guitar, was already proficient. I didn't have to, I like uh, got to whatever you call it, like sub out of those guitar classes because I had the techniques for guitar. But piano, I didn't know any piano other than like what the notes were before college. And so you take piano class and you take 4 semesters of that, and then improvising at the piano, and you take voice classes, and you take percussion methods classes. And some schools require that you are still taking classes on like wind instruments and like learning how to make sound on a trumpet and a tuba and all those kind of things too. So it just depends on the school for those kind of things. But usually it's just to be um, to be in the school and to be accepted on some instrument. But I will say, the more you know, the easier school is going to be, because if you already have a solid foundation on any of those instruments, that's more time that you can focus on the others and on the like learning the therapy side as well.
That's what I would like to get into. Like where like the nuts and bolts. Like I mean, I've wrote songs. I understand, music composition as much as somebody who didn't go to school for it can, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Um but like what is the nuts and bolts? Like what is it about these that makes you choose certain songs for certain situations? Like I mean, I kind of distracted you from the initial line of questioning. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
maybe we should go back to that. So you're kind of analyzing the situation. Where does the music
Yes.
actually come in? Like what physical thing do you do?
Yes. Well, in general, I'm trying to use music from my philosophical and theoretical view. I'm trying to use as much music as possible. Um, and basically, how that works is somebody comes in, and whether that's a child, and I'm doing something that is like literally a hello song, or whether that's just an adult and an introductory experience. Maybe it's somebody I know, and we're doing a vocal warm up. But I'll give you an example. So, for example, I frequently go to memory care facilities for senior adults, and I use a good balance of music that is familiar to those people and also music that is not familiar. So, a good example is I start off the session using an adaptation of Hank Williams. So I start off with "Hey, good looking," and that's like my tongue-in-cheek kind of joke, like, "Oh, look at all these beautiful people here today. Hey, good looking," and kind of start off with that. So that's my dad joke, and then from there, I know enough about the theory and improvising that uh, we call it adaptations or extensions. Basically, that's how do you take a framework of a song and adapt it to what you need to do. So instead of just "Hey, good looking," and then there's the B section, the "I got a hot rod Ford." Instead of just those two parts, I might add in another part that may or may not be the melody of either of those parts, or a totally new part where I'm just doing something that says like, "Hey to Blake, and Blake, how are you today?" And just like a reality orientation question where I'm singing and asking like, "Blake, how are you today?" And you would say whatever. What would you say?
I'm a little bit underslept, but I'm good.
Okay, so yeah, a little tired. Okay, who is? And then I might do something like, "Is anybody else feeling tired today?" And just like use that individual's answer as a way to connect with the group.
Gotcha.
And then and I may or may not give them something simple to shake along like Egg Shakers, but that's just something to use, like maybe a familiar song at the beginning. And then something else I frequently do with older adults is um, physical and cognitive and speech exercises. So that's where I get into some of the extra training. There are a lot of extra trainings in music therapy that you can do. And one of the ones I have is called neurologic music therapy. And that really digs into the functional and psychological aspects of how music is processed in the brain and how it's processed in the brain affecting what it makes your body do. So I use rhythmic based or melodic based experiences to promote speech production, to promote physical movement. And that might look like using a piano or using a guitar, and by the melody and by the rhythmic cue and all the different things that I'm using, I'm prompting them to raise their arms up and raise their arms down. Or I'm doing a simple choir like exercise like, "I can sing real high, da-na, I can sing real high," and just doing something like that. And but the transfer is, it's not like a choir exercise like that you would do in a choir. The point is to keep their vocal strength up, and so that they can ask for help when they're in a situation when they need help, or to make sure that they are moving their body and the blood is flowing, and um, using strong rhythmic pulses to make sure that they can keep their motor coordination up. And then I do experiences that almost like a musical brain teaser. So something like a good example is one that my colleague taught me. It's give me a guy's name that starts with the letter A.
Aaron.
Aaron. Okay, a female name that starts with A.
Ashley.
Aaron and Ashley, and they live in what place that starts with the letter A?
That was harder. Alabama.
Aaron, Ashley, in Alabama, and they sell what thing at the market?
Apples.
It's apples. That's always what people say for A. So then I have a cute little song that goes, "Aaron and Ashley live in Alabama and they sell apples in the markets." And then so I have them sing that with me back. And then it can be really funny depending on what people pick. So there's that humor aspect of it as well. And so there's a lot of things going on. There's direct questions that people are responding to. They have to be oriented to the moment, as well as that short-term memory right after we pick all of those. Then we're singing it back, and the music's reinforcing that they can keep something in their short-term memory for that moment, which is usually the deficit with like dementia and Alzheimer's type of disorders. And after that, I might use something like Little Richard and do like Tutti Frutti, and we're shaking an instrument and the energy level's going up, or maybe it's Hound Dog by Elvis or something like that. And then during Hound Dog in the middle, I might have something where right after a verse, it's "Now play this rhythm, chuck, 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 and I might strum on my guitar like a rhythm, and then they're in training to a rhythm. And that's another example of like extending an experience. And some people do things like create like a musical bingo board or, different kind of experiences like that to engage with older adults. So sometimes it's basically experiences can be receptive or they can be active in a very generic sense. So sometimes we're doing experiences where we have people playing instruments like xylophones. It could be copying a specific pattern. It could be learning an instrument, like while they're in the hospital, to be something that's like a coping skill, learning guitar, learning ukulele, learning piano. It could be in the kind of counseling based realm. We could be doing something like lyric analysis or song discussion, where I will bring a song into a setting, like a psychiatric setting, like a new song that I just use is that I guess I just feel like the new John Mayer song, or it's a few months old now.
Mm-hmm.
But I bring that song in and I'm like, okay, guys, what's your response to this song? Like, what lyrics stuck out to you right away? So I'll perform it live, and then we'll talk about it. And then I may or may not have like a theme or a purpose um, behind it, or it may just be let's let them pull out of it what they need for today. Uh, but just that instead of being so direct and coming to a counseling session that's very like, tell me everything, that stereotypical sit on the sofa and tell me about your life.
Right.
It's using something that's powerful and people connect to. And there's also that kind of third layer there of it can be easy to speak about a speaker in a song instead of directly about their experience. That could be an issue with things like trauma and addiction and things like that. Um, or it can just bring to light things. And in a group environment, you're seeing people like, oh, I agree with that person, or I disagree with that person, and here's why. But even recently, just doing something like that, we had a client recently talk about, like, this part of this song reminded me about, my mom passing away. And I've never really processed that. And I wonder if that's a lot of the reason that I use and things like that. So, and then that one person saying that makes a lot of people head nods, and a lot of people are like, wow, I never thought of it like that. And we might use something like that and turn it into lyric substitution, which is like, it's like songwriting light. So what I might do is take that song, and it's, I guess I just feel like, and put blanks, almost like Mad Libs. And then that doesn't require an exceptional amount of songwriting ability.
Right.
But it's a good way that suddenly that message becomes super personalized. Now, with some clients in the hospital, I've done straight up totally original songwriting, and that's can be on a continuum of co-writing. So it could be me assisting a lot, or it could me just basically encouraging them. And we've done things like perform those for staff members, perform them for their family members. Maybe there's something they haven't been able to communicate to their family about, and this songwriting outlet's been super meaningful for them. And then there's a lot of people doing really cool stuff nowadays too, like really outside of the box things called community music therapy. The closest thing I've done, like a big example, is we had a prom at the children's hospital I worked at every year for kids with chronic conditions, cancer, other just Crohn's disease, different things that really limit their ability to be in typical school setting and things like that. So they're not interacting with a lot of people, maybe other than their family and their healthcare team. And we do a prom every year. And well, last year I was like, let's get a band. So I took some of my clients that have worked with us in music therapy, and I was like, well, you're pretty good at trumpet. You seem like you're willing to learn keyboard. You already play acoustic. Let's get you on electric. And we played a set and had an awesome show, and they got to show off in front of their peers. And that model of, these aren't people coming to therapy. These are musicians that I can help them get to that point where they can share their gifts and things like that too. So that's a newer thought and thing in music therapy as well. But that was super fun. I got to partner with Ernie Ball, and JHS let us borrow a few pedals, and different stuff like that. So that was a cool, like, how can I get the music community involved as well? So basically, music therapy, it's kind of hard sometimes to explain because it can look like so much. But I also think that's part of the reason that it's so cool and such a good opportunity for a musician, because it's generally a viable career path. You're not going to be making zillions of dollars, but there's not a lot of music careers that you do make zillions of dollars. But I think it's a very stable career path. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of evidence base behind it that more and more places are hiring. Most of the time, the bigger problem nowadays is there's not enough people to fill the jobs. So it's a good career path for a musician for sure.
I think, I'm just thinking about the things you would experience and the things that you would see doing this. I think it's a great option for those that are wired for it. But you're sitting here telling me these stories, and I'm not even there, and I'm not even directly involved, and I'm like getting a little bit misty. I wonder, like, are you just bombarded with experiences on a daily basis that would make your average, person like me just cry all the time? Because I feel like I would just cry all the time when being exposed to these people in these situations.
Yeah.
It's such a perspective giver, for lack of a better term.
No, absolutely. I do think that there is that element. Although it is an awesome career path, it's not for everybody. And there are elements of, like, I've known students and I've known professionals that have burnt out and not been able to do it. Because, like I said, you don't make a zillion dollars, but it's a solid career path. But if you can't handle the emotional stresses, and then there's also, like, you're always dealing with misconceptions. You walk into a building and they're like, the music guy is here, and you're like, well, I just have a 4-year degree and a lot of training, but yeah, the music guy is here. So some people don't, like, to me, that's no sweat off of my back, but I know that is something that gets to certain people. And working with challenging populations, I do think that's one of the best ways to work in music therapy. Is a lot of people find out, I don't want to work in hospice, or I don't want to work in the hospital, or I don't want to work here, right? But because this is too heavy. For me, I loved working in oncology. I love working in end of life care, and different things like that. That gives me energy. I love to be a part of that special moment. And don't get me wrong, I have straight up cried. I have, had to deal with grief and still have to deal with grief and just hard situations. But I think it's knowing yourself, knowing what you can handle, knowing when you need to, have supervision, have another music therapist that you can have, like, counseling time with, have a counselor, have a therapist, because, like, it is heavy work. While it's also, I think that is the unsuspecting thing, is everybody thinks, oh, it's super fun. What a cool job. You get to play music all day, which it is. But there's also all of these heavy parts as well, that if you're not arming yourself appropriately, you could set yourself up for dealing with a lot of issues and confronting a lot of things in your own life and how you're feeling about things. Because that is a very real thing. For me, I love a lot of those populations, and really the things that wear me down are, like, really repetitive tasks and things like that. So for me, like, dealing with the heavy stuff is not necessarily the part that burns me out. It's like how am I going to manage all of these other things I've got to do and are very repetitive, or this population that is, I'm doing the same thing over and over because of the nature of the population. So those are the ones that are actually, like, harder for me. So everybody has their thing, and it's kind of your personality, and you have to like people. So if you now, whether you're introverted or extroverted, I know great music therapists that, need their alone time, and things like that. That's not really the issue, but you do have to want to be able to serve people. And if you don't like that, then that's maybe not a good choice either.
So here's kind of an off the wall thing. Are there Are there any techniques that we as musicians can use? Maybe when we're in a situation where we're feeling down or overwhelmed or need to focus or something, is there something we can use, that maybe we're overlooking? Like, we have guitars. Everyone that listens to this podcast, I'm assuming, has a guitar
Yeah.
around. Like, is there techniques that you can kind of use on yourself to help whatever situation you're dealing with, outside of just picking up your guitar and strumming it, like active things that about that the listeners could use?
Yeah. There are a lot of good wellness type of research, not even just by music therapists. There's a lot of people that just do music research as well. Um, and I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this already do some of these things, but using music to help you go to sleep or help you study or different things like that. But I would say some specific things when you're talking about um, about maybe dealing with like depression or anxiety. It seemed like kind of like more what you were saying a little bit, but uh, I think being open to that songwriting thing, and I think trying new experiences, because sometimes as like guitarists you can get very caught into like, this is the genre that I play, and you can get burnout by I play one way. And I think some of the simplest things you can do as a musician to take care of yourself is try to expand the types of genres and things that you're listening to and that you're learning. And I think just that musical growth is definitely one way. Another interesting thing is there's recent research that shows that learning new instruments actually uh, helps older adults fight off Alzheimer's. So literally, as you age, learning new instruments is actually super, super, super beneficial for your cognitive abilities. So if you've ever wanted to learn whatever instrument, do it. Like, there's no late time to do it. I try and pick up a new instrument every couple of years. My newest one is pedal steel.
Oh man,
And
you're reading my mind.
yeah, it is. If I was to start again on pedal steel, I would have started with non-pedal and just lap steel at first.
Okay.
But dude, pedal steel is so much fun though. So it's just, you feel like an idiot for like 6 months. But after you get over that initial like hill, you're like, oh, this actually sounds pretty cool. Um,
It's funny because
but
as you were saying that, I'm like, man, I've always wanted to learn the pedal steel. I should really bite the bullet and start learning the pedal steel. And then you were like,
dude,
pedal steel. I was like, oh man, I love pedal steel so much. It's one of my favorite sounds on the planet. I love it.
oh, there's a guy who has a podcast called, I think it's called The Pedal Steel Show. He's maybe even out of the Portland area. I know he's in
Oh,
your neck of the woods. His name's Brian Dast, and he plays with like singer songwriters and stuff like that. So I know that scene around there, there's like a lot of pedal steel open jams and things like that. You should definitely go
yeah.
check that out.
Yeah, it's one of those things where with guitar we're kind of lucky because you can dip your toe in the water without too much of a financial commitment.
Oh yeah,
And it's like, yeah, I want to try learn guitar. Okay, I'll get you a Squire, and you can give it a try. There's not
for
really a
$100. Yeah.
Squire version of pedal steel, so
No, there's not. And unfortunately, like, you kind of need like a mentor, because when I was looking to buy my pedal steel is the most expensive guitar I own,
right.
because um because you don't want a crappy guitar, and you want something that has enough pedals and knee levers for you to get started on. So I got it's called a Stage One pedal steel. It's this builder out of Branson, Missouri.
Okay.
He was super cool, and it was a very affordable, like, entry level steel that's still like giggable quality. So I would say, like, if I was to give you like a reference, it would be probably uh like a Mexican Strat. Like, that's like the equivalent like level of it. Like,
Okay, that's
definitely
solid.
giggable, definitely usable, will get you along fine. But you can easily spend thousands of dollars on pedal steel. Like the average, like really nice professional is like 2,000 plus.
Nice.
So mine was about, I think after with everything was about 1,400.
Okay.
Which is still crazy expensive. But
it's expensive, but it's not the craziest thing I've ever heard.
No, but when you're like you're saying, it's not a Squire.
Right. Okay, I want to pause this for a second here. Okay, this is the moment I'm talking about. So, if you're up and about doing things, now's a good time to go find a chair for just 5 minutes or so and just take a load off. Just take a chill pill and relax with us for just a little bit. All right. Are you there? Are you there? Okay, if you can't, come back to this later. But seriously, if you can take a couple minutes with us, I think you'll really enjoy it. So we paused the recording for just a minute because I had a funny idea that I wanted to try, and I think this is going to work out well. So normally we don't do that. Normally we just record the whole way through, but I wanted to ask Chris this before I just put it out on the air. And I thought, I've got a really busy day ahead of me. It's a little bit stressful. There's some stuff going on. Nothing bad. Just, normal everyday stress types things. And I thought maybe if he could, provide, a sort of an exercise in relaxation or centering or something. I'm not really sure because I don't know this world, but I kind of explained to him what my day was like, and he had some ideas of things we could try, and we could actually kind of take a look into what a little mini session might look like. So that's kind of what we're doing right now, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to. I'll just hand the reins over to Chris.
Yeah, so this is an example of literally something I've done lots of times in sessions. It's called a relaxation script, and basically I'm using a script that I've developed, and usually I just find scripts online. Like I literally just Google for relaxation scripts, and then I just edit them. And I'm like, man, that part seems a little clunky, and I just change the words. And then this is something you can also use like very often. There's a lot of really good YouTube videos of different relaxation scripts and mindfulness things. But I might use this for a patient who's in pain or who's having a lot of anxiety, or, like you said, like just regular day-to-day stuff, just stressed. And I'm going to do like an abbreviated version of it, but basically I'm going to do it like for real though. So Blake, just go ahead and get as comfortable as you can in your chair. Whether that means just leaning back and just, having your feet on the ground or whatever's comfortable. So
all right.
Go ahead and do that. And then just to show you all behind the curtain a little bit, an example of a way that I could adapt music is one thing I like to use. I really like this chord progression for guided relaxation.
Yes, that's nice.
So I use some chords, but when you speed it up, it's actually. So hopefully that's not too distracting to think throughout. But I like to use the police when I'm doing guided relaxation.
All right.
So,
all right.
But get comfortable. Go ahead and lean back. Take a deep breath in. And out. Take another deep breath in. And out. And just keep taking nice breaths at whatever pace is comfortable for you. Because the point is just to take a couple of minutes and think about your own peaceful, safe place. And this can be something that you can imagine at any time you're having a really stressful day. And just something to feel centered and just mindful of your body and how you're going to feel throughout the day. Take another breath in and out. And one more in and out. Just let the music wash over you. Let your breathing become a little bit slower as your body starts to feel more relaxed. Now I want you to begin and create a picture in your mind of a place where you can feel completely relaxed. Everything for you to feel calm and serene. This can be a place that you've been before, or this could be totally imaginary. Start with the physical layout. Is it somewhere indoors or somewhere outdoors? Is it a small place or a large place? Now picture some more details. Who's in this place? Are you alone or are you with someone else? Are there other people present? Are there animals or birds? Is it only you or do you have company? Now start to take in, what are those relaxing sounds around you? What are the tastes and the smells? What's the sensation of touch? What's the temperature? Is there any breeze that's present? What's the surface you're on? Imagine the details of this calming place. Now in your mind's eye, I want you to think about the sights. What are the colors, shapes, objects, plants, water? What are all the things that make this place enjoyable? To add further detail, if you haven't already, I want you to imagine yourself there. What would you be doing? Perhaps you're just sitting, enjoying it, relaxing. Maybe you're walking or doing some other activity. As you imagine yourself there, imagine that feeling of calm, of peace, a place where you can just be, where there's no worries, no concerns, no cares at all. Just rejuvenation, relaxation, and just being. Enjoy this place for a few more moments. Memorize those sights, sounds, all the sensation. Know that you can return to this place whenever you need a break. In the last moments, I want you to just take a picture, almost like you're going to snap a shot for Instagram. What is this place? And picture yourself there. The moment you're imagining now, you can picture that again the next time you need to relax. I'm going to count backwards, 5 to 1. Once I get there, you're going to be fully alert and back into the world, ready to face the day. 5, start to feel your fingers wiggle. 4, maybe you're alert to the surface that you're on. 3, you're cognizant of your breathing. 2, maybe you're opening your eyes and looking around.
Wow, you're good at that.
You like that? I try to
was
leave
nice.
space there and let you make the first move after that.
Ooh, that's what I needed. I didn't know
There
it,
you
but
go.
that's what I needed. That was wonderful.
Where
Thank
were you
you.
thinking of?
I was actually picturing a place that I have not been for a very long time. It's called Lost Lake. It's here on Mount Hood in Oregon. I haven't been there since I was very young, and while I was mentally there, I was like, I'm gonna go there. It's not like it's
Good.
not like it's far away. It's right there. It's just like, it's like a 40-minute, 45-minute, an hour maybe drive from where I'm at.
Yeah,
I'm like,
sweet.
well, next nice day I get the opportunity, it looks like I'm just gonna go there.
That sounds awesome, man. Well, yeah, that's an example of like an actual thing that I have done with lots of people. And sometimes I have people fall asleep and then I just try to moonwalk out the door and like not make noise. So,
Right.
Some people might think it could be tongue in cheek or cheesy, but I mean, most people it's like, nope, that feels great. Like I'm relaxed. So,
Oh yeah, I feel great. I feel like I just got it done with a session with the Calm app.
there you go. Yeah. So
that
the
was
cool
wonderful.
thing is like I'm able to control a lot of variables in the music. That's one of the big advantages of I can really personalize things. I'm in the room. I can help people create a relaxation script. I like that one though because it's very vague and open and it lets like you could do that with a group of people and people might be thinking of totally different places. I've had people say like I was on a motorcycle and other people like I'm on the swing on the porch, So I like that one's open to whatever. Cause sometimes people do scripts that are like, I'm walking on the beach. And for some people, they're like, ugh, I just think of sand everywhere and sunburns,
That was me. I'm
so-
like, beach not relaxing for me. So
yeah. So, and that's why I like that open-ended one. And I always like to ask like, where are people thinking? Cause I always think it's interesting.
yeah, that was really nice. Yeah, for some reason, I just went right back there. It's again, I don't think I've been there in maybe close to 20 years, at least not on purpose. Might have drove by it or something on the way to something else. But yeah, it's just a small little, state park campground. And there's nothing completely remarkable about it other than everywhere around Mount Hood is beautiful. So it, you can kind of pick your place there. But it's like just another lake just around Mount Hood. I don't know why I went there specifically, but that's where my brain went.
That's good. Yeah, I like to use that one too because, like I said, that's a good example that I use in presentations because it's like that song is straight up. Every breath you take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
It's just an example of like how you can use familiar music and you can use things. So if you're using music to relax, though, the best thing for musicians is to use things that are unfamiliar to you because otherwise you're going to be analyzing it. And it's hard to switch off that brain if you know the music really well, unless you've conditioned yourself to think this is my calming, relaxing music. So.
It's funny that we're talking about calming and relaxing and centering and that's all really important. But I'm starting to realize that like I've been using music in a different way, kind of the opposite way. In a weird form of kind of self therapy that I didn't really consider that it was that until just now. Whereas like I'll put on like one of the things that helps me get through the week mentally is putting on like very aggressive post hardcore or metal or something like that and going to the gym. Like that blows the cobwebs out for me and I'm there's a certain sweet spot. There's a few bands that hit that sweet spot for me where it's aggressive enough, but also groovy enough and also riffy enough that it, it's like Cancer Bats, Every Time I Die, a few things like that. But I didn't consider it a form of therapy until just now, and I guess it kind of is. It's just the opposite.
Yeah, all of those kind of principles of like the psychology of music is definitely things that we leverage as music therapists because it's like people already like we're wired to respond that way. So we leverage those things in what we do. And like music is already therapeutic in nature. So I think that's why that idea of music therapy makes so much sense to so many people. Cause it's like, well, duh, I use it for this and I use it for that. And
Yeah.
There is a difference between like I'm a professional doing whatever, but it's like I empower people to use music in their life any way they can. So
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. I mean, we're all here, everyone's listening to this because of music, not because fuzz pedals are awesome, which they are, but it's not
they are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not why anybody's here though. It's the power of music and what it has, the impact it has on our brains. And that's why this was a fun episode to kind of explore. I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. Thank you for coming on. This was awesome.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Well, to wrap this thing up, I would be remiss if we didn't, we already, I already just didn't talk about gear hardly at all on this whole thing, but I think everyone will probably be okay with that. But I'd better ask you at least the last couple classic questions, or we might have pitchforks on our hands.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So what is your favorite Boss pedal?
I think I love Boss pedals. Probably my favorite is the RV6. I use that. That's
good choice.
Always on the RV5. The RV5 is always on my board. I do a lot of playing for church and stuff like that. So the RV6 and the modulate, or RV5 and the modulate, so great.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably my favorite. I have several on my board, but I would go with the RV5.
Good pull. All right. The RV5 is great. It's such a good pedal. It's such a good sounding reverb that like it kind of gets pushed to the side sometimes. Like people forget how good of a pedal that is. It's a great pedal.
I prefer it to like a lot of other reverb pedals.
Yeah, it's really good. All right. So we've talked about music therapy this whole time, but the real question is, what kind of pizza do you prescribe to people when they're feeling down? Yeah. What kind of pizza do you like, Chris?
If I'm testing out a place for how good its pizza is, I usually go for a margarita pizza, just basil.
Okay.
I love pepperoni too. I am not one of those pineapple on pizza people, and I love
Thank
pineapple.
you.
It's probably my favorite fruit, and I know that you're the opposite. But
Right.
I love pineapple, but it's not on my pizza.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that one I can't quite figure out. I feel like, but I guess I like apples, but I don't want apples on my pizza. So
yeah,
I guess that kind of
there's
does make
lots
sense.
of things. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can get behind that. Well, thanks so much for this. Thanks for the relaxation session.
Yeah.
I don't usually feel this chill after recording podcasts, but man, I'm feeling pretty chill. Like this is
You're gonna have
this
to
is
go
a good.
put on some post-hardcore to wake up now.
I'm gonna have to because I got stuff to do. I think I'll be blaring some. I don't know. I might even have to go heavier. I think I might be. It might be an at the in flames type of day, or or at the gates, something like that.
Solid.
That might be what I need.
Yeah.
But this is awesome. So maybe this is probably a good thing to leave people with. Where can they find more information on this? Where would you point people to? I know they can Google, but like if there's some specific resources you would recommend to people interested in this.
Yes, for sure. I would look up musictherapy.org. That is the American Music Therapy Association's website. You can find out all about music therapy, where schools are. You can find a music therapist in your local area. So that's kind of like a good one-stop shop that you could figure out a lot of answers to questions. I would definitely recommend there. There's a lot of good music therapy podcasters as well. There's one that I just started listening to. It's called Instrumental, and the mental part is in parentheses. And it's all about music psychology, which I think a good bit of your listeners would find that super fascinating. All the stuff you're kind of interested, you would find it fascinating. She's really good. It's called the Instrumental Podcast.
Oh, sweet. I'm definitely going to look that up. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. This was awesome. For Chris, this is Blake. Good luck and good tones. All right, folks, we did it. That was quite a time, wasn't it? I thought that was all really fascinating. Hopefully you got something out of that as well. And yeah, look up musictherapy.org if that sounds like something that is interesting to you. If you want more of this conversation, we actually talk a little bit more gear on Patreon. Yes. So Chris came over to, blah, blah, blah. My mouth is going too fast. Chris came over to Patreon with me, and we recorded a little bit more over there. And it was, as you heard, more of a great conversation. So if you want extra content delivered to your ears, Patreon's the place you do it. I have been putting out extra episodes every week for the $5 and up people. So you can go to patreon.com/tonemob, see if that's something that interests you. If not, I totally get it. I understand. But please keep listening, and please keep telling your friends, because that's what keeps this thing on the rails. All right, until next week, folks. Talk to you later. Bye.
One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.